Street Media Utah, thank you for joining us today here on KMMU. I am going to be introducing our guests momentarily, but I want to say a big thank you for you showing up. Now, real quickly, a little bit about Main Street Media Utah. We have, as you know, we have a number of different shows. You can find us on Rumble, you can find us on YouTube, and you can find us live on X. Apparently on Rumble and on YouTube, there is a chat feature that if you want to, you can interact with us on that when we are live. Doesn't necessarily mean, for some reason, I don't think Twitter is feeding into that live chat. But we're glad to be here, glad to have you with us, and we're looking forward to interacting with you this afternoon. Typically, Tuesdays from 4 to 6 p.m., when we don't have some technical things that we're working out, we're here with you. And we will be here for the rest of the show with you folks. So looking forward to having you guys join us and looking forward to this interaction with Michael Letts. So let me introduce Michael Letts. Michael Letts is the founder, president, and CEO of Invest USA. It's a national grassroots nonprofit organization that is helping hundreds of communities provide thousands of bulletproof vests for their police forces through educational, public relations, sponsorship, and fundraising programs. He has over 30 years of law enforcement experience under his belt, hence his pro-police stance for his brothers and sisters in blue. Those interested in learning more should visit him, and whether you're interested in learning more, trust me, you're interested in learning more. Go to Invest USA, that's INVEST USA.org. Also, you can go to another initiative that he has, which is restoringjustice.us. And he also has a book, which I forgot to bring into my office. I have it right down. I don't have it in the office with me, or else I'd show the book. But he has a book, and I told him, and he even signed it, sent it to me. Nice little note. I appreciate that, brother. I told you on K Talk, the show that I do from 10 to noon today. Forgive me. I'm probably not going to be able to get that reading done until after football's over. But I might be able to do it sooner. Who knows? We'll see.
Make sure you use it as a doorstop until football season's over.
No, it's not going to be a doorstop. I don't want it to get ruined. So it's in a nice, safe location.
Good.
So, Michael, we have a ton going on in the world. There is a lot happening today in today's news in the last month. It's been several weeks since you've been on. I don't think you've been on since we had at least on Main Street Media Utah, I don't think you've joined us since the second shooting and Trump attempt. I do also want to talk about what we're seeing in the political world. Kind of want to touch base with you on a few things there. And also something that we didn't cover in last show, but I want to get your opinion on this because you and I talked off air. I want your opinion of what the Israelis did to Hamas. I'm going, okay, how much of it is plastic explosives? How much is heating the phones? Do I need to be worried about my iPhone that could be happening to me? Because every once in a while that sucker starts to heat up. And I'm like, do I need to take it and chuck it somewhere, 10 feet away from me just in case? So, and bottom line is that would be a perfect system to have, the Democrats to go at the bottom line is the Democrats or the deep state to go after people like you and I.
The problem with that scenario, you are correct. And by the way, they could use that phone just the way it is to cause you damage. Okay. That having been said, it's all in the control list. As of right now, I do not think that when you got your phone, John, that you signed up as a conservative Republican, and went on a control list for such. Now, they may know who you are, but they would have to do extensive work to pull the identified personnel and create a control list of those numbers because it has to be with the same carrier, et cetera, to get it all to coordinate to work in the operations that they're looking to do. They haven't gone to that stage yet, but you raise a very interesting point. Could they? Without question.
So it's interesting. So I will tell you, okay, I'm not going to go down the path of whether I think how moral I think what they did is. However, if you're going to go after a group of people, I think they went about it very strategically with as little collateral damage as possible.
That is
I
correct.
have talked to, in the last 10 days, 4 people that do a lot of traveling, 4 people, a lot of traveling out and have done it recently outside the United States into Africa and the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
And I've asked them this and into areas that are Muslim. I will be sincere that no one was in Lebanon. No one was in was in Gaza, and no one was interacting with those individuals. Hopefully, Sunday I will be able to have a conversation with someone that has recently been in the Gaza area. But I have asked all 4 of these people, have you in your travels seen a pager? And not one of them said they have seen a pager in years.
Most people haven't.
So my assumption is, so what happened? How did this work out? First of all, Hezbollah found out that the Israelis were tapping their cell phones, and they said, get rid of your cell phones. Gonzo, get rid of your iPhone or whatever phone they have. And this is another thing I'm told. And people may or may don't have to believe this, but all over the world, I'm talking third world countries, they don't have running water in their huts. They don't have an electrical outlet. They have cell phones. Okay?
They use solar power to charge them.
Right. So they, living in mud huts in no running water, and they still have a cell phone with, like you said, solar charging, or however exactly all of them do it, I don't know, but they have cell phones. So the bottom line is, Hezbollah finds out Israel's tapping their phones, listening to their communications. Then they go, okay, well, folks, now we need to get paid. Let's get pagers. I'm sorry, I do not. I've heard some people that are on conservative talk who say that the pagers are being used by others. Everyone that I've talked to, and I admit it, I'm not over in Lebanon. It's not someone that's coming from Lebanon, but basically nobody has pagers anymore.
They're missing the point, John. It doesn't make any difference whether they're using pagers, two-way radios.
Okay, let me get to it. I have to give it to them and the level of like precision that they did. So first they have them get off their cell phones. Then they are smart enough planned to make a company and sell that company to Hezbollah pagers. On top of that, they have walkie-talkies. So they get them off their cell phones, get them on pagers, attack the pagers. Then they go to walkie-talkies. They attack those. They attack that. So they're 3 layers deep. And then they get them into basically a room, and they hit the room. I mean, it's like I'm going to give it to the Israelis. They are good. Folks, just if you think I'm totally on the Israeli side, I'm not going to say that I'm not necessary. I am a little on the Israeli side for the way the strategicness of what they're doing. Just so you know, my concern is, just like with October 7th, I think eventually that type of tactical level is going to come at people like me, Not necessarily Michael Letts, because he's a good guy. But people like Talk with John, I could see them coming after and going that level of interaction. So that's something to keep in mind down the future, and why it is so important to be in the go into the ballot box, promoting shows like this, promoting people like Michael Letts. You're going to hear things today said that I'm not hearing anywhere else on the mainstream media. And I'm going to be very clear. There's something that has to do with bunkers. We'll get into that on the U.S. border. I've not heard anywhere else. I have no way of verifying it. But I'm also going to tell you I've been able to verify things and things for well over 2 years, all the way back to predating Uvalde, Texas shooting. Michael Letts has told me things that have wound up coming true in the news time and time and time again. He's proven that he can give me information that doesn't come out for weeks and months. So the bottom line is I have a very high level of trust in Michael, and he has extensive experience, not just in local law enforcement, but all throughout the world. Now, if Michael X wants to talk about that stuff, I'll let him. Bottom line is, a guy that proves to me time and time again that he's giving me good information, I'm going to trust. I'm going to say, now, let me be clear. Someone that I have a very high level of respect for, that's in I'm going to say in the freedom movement on a national level, is Alex Jones. Alex Jones doesn't agree with the way this attack was gone. And frankly, as far as the Hezbollah, he thinks it was a little dirty dealing. This is where I go. I think they're both bad. I think they're both leadership at the top of both groups is probably evil and probably satanic. So, but I'm going to say we need to pay attention to what happens so we can go, we have to worry about it coming after us. So, Michael, that was a little bit of a long diatribe, but like I said, they win about it. Wow, impressive.
Well, here we were going to interject, John, and you're talking about whether it was pagers, whether it was the two ways, etc. The master pin of the whole operation is what we call control list, and the control list will have then who is targeted and how you contain it to that target only. You have to be on that control list for that to happen. Now, would I mention that? Why would you care? Because agencies at the direction of their government put together control lists, okay? So whether it's a control list because we're going after an armed insurgency, Hamas, Hezbollah, this is not new, folks. We did this in World War II, okay? Not electronically, but we had control groups back then as well. Whether you're going after a particular armed militant, or if you have a government that says, I don't like conservatives, or I don't like liberals, or I don't like you. If you're in the driver's seat, you are building and putting together the control list. Once the control list is put together, then you decide how you want to use that control list and what tools you have available to take action against the control list. In this particular situation, you were correct. Once the control list, they didn't want citizens, they wanted militants. Hamas right now. Hezbollah is on the control list as well. And once they figured out they had the people that they wanted on the control list, they're targeted. These are the people we're going after. Then it was very easy to decide what was the next move. Pagers, two-way radios, etc. And they have you on the control list, and the control list is the only thing that utilizes the technology to send harm to that particular control list. So how does that translate to what we're talking about? It's very simple, John. You better make sure you're involved in the political process and you have a government that will watch out for the individual rights of citizens instead of using its infrastructure to create control lists to determine how to control the people. Why do you think we use the word control list? is to control people.
Yeah.
And you don't want. It's one thing to have a control list of, say, MS-13, Tierra de Fuego, things like that you know are specifically aligned to hurt people, to hurt
Okay,
citizens.
but those two groups that you just mentioned are also non-citizens,
Correct.
or at least it comes from a group that is non-citizens. They may have MS-13. Of course, I'm sure they've got people that are now citizens that are born and raised in here and come from parents that are born and raised in the United States as well. That's probably true.
Correct.
Is it 100% true? I don't know, but I'm going to assume that it's true. But still, the organization comes from outside the United States, just like Venezuela and Hezbollah and all those do. Hey, you're tied in, and it's obvious that you're tied into it. Sorry, the FBI is going to catch you, but they need to do legal means of getting that information.
And to take a quick rabbit trail of what you're talking about, we can't just decide we're going to go. If we're going to do it the right way, we can't just decide we're going to go after MS-13 or Tierra de Agua. We have procedures in place. First of all, we have to declare them a terrorist organization. Congress has to do that, okay? We have to pretty much forewarn you, John, you're involved with a group that's going on the list of a terrorist operation. It falls into a whole different category. How we operate and how we capture and the rights that you have as a terrorist organization versus the rights you have as an American citizen are two different things. So we give you advance notice. This is the group that's all been on the list, and we're going to go after that group. You understand you put yourself as an enemy combatant now of the United States. And I will tell you, we do not treat prisoners of war the same way we treat citizens who are jailed or, or jail citizens. Anyway, that having been said, you want to make sure that you're involved in the political process, that you don't have people in office that use their authority, abuse their authority, be a better word, to create weaponization and politicalization of agencies to go after people that they don't agree with. That is what we have seen this administration, quite frankly, doing. And I think I can give plenty of illustrations as to how that's happened in the last 3 years. But that's why it's so important. You take a look at what happened with Israel, with Hezbollah, with Hamas, with what they did with the page, etc. It all goes back to the issue of the control list. And if you have a government that's putting together a control list against its own citizens and weaponizing agencies to go after you, the same as Israel did with the pages and all, they can go after you in all kinds of ways, whether it is emotional, whether it is psychological, or whether it is physical attacks, as you saw with the pagers and the two-way radios. So let's make sure that you know who you're voting for, what their philosophy is. I can tell you this. One of the candidates has very repeatedly said with great vigor that she is amazed at the power she wields with a pen to be able to issue a warrant, destroy your life, and then drop that warrant afterwards, even if there wasn't any cause for the warrant. She's just giddy with power as to what she can do with the stroke of a pen. That's the kind of attitude you better be careful with, because if they love that, they love control lists. They love being able to tell who they're going to go after and who that they can reward if you do the right thing.
Well, we have hundreds of J6 prisoners that all they did is go through a building, or even some of them didn't even go in the building. They were on the grounds.
And we put together control of, here's what's so extremely frustrating, John. We put together a control list for that. And these are people that we deem to be more important to put on that control list than rapists, than domestic terrorists, than cartel leaders. I can give you example
Whoa,
after.
whoa. Okay, so right now, sorry, Michael, I've got the liberal chatter going, like that liberal chatter going in my head. Oh, Michael, you're so full of it. No, they wouldn't go after pedophiles. They wouldn't drop going after pedophiles. They wouldn't drop going after other people. Oh, really? What did they do with the NTSB and Homeland Security, and when they fly around, the guys flying around,
U.S. Marshals, Air
Marshals, who were they supposed to leave, and who did they go to?
They went to focus on J6ers.
And they left pedophiles.
Correct.
They left cartel members.
It wasn't just air marshals. We have so many people,
FBI.
FBI, whistleblowers, and other agencies that have come forward as whistleblowers. We have their sworn testimony that they were told, I'm going to remove you from the cases that you have now and put you assisting. In Christopher Wray's words, the biggest case history the FBI has ever undertaken, the J6. Those are his words, not mine. And when they said, so we're going to go after Jay Siggers, and said, I'm right in the middle of a pedophile case. You tell me that's more important? That's the order. You're not to question it. And we have you just got stacks of these affidavits from whistleblowers. So that is a totally debunked response that they wouldn't do that. They've already done it, and they've done it repeatedly with so many, and even out of Christopher Wray's own words. This is the biggest case in the history of the FBI, J6. And I've said this, I'll be very quick about what I'm saying, John. If that's the biggest case, because you look at what was the end outcome. I didn't see tanks rolling in. I didn't see armed militia taking over with weapons. I didn't see them gunning down people, overthrowing, blowing up the Capitol, overthrowing and sitting in the president's seat, sitting in Congress. We've now taken over the power. I didn't see any of that. I saw a few broken windows from a few vandals, and that was about it. That was the best they could do.
And we don't even know who those vandals truly are. Right. We don't know if they are Antifa. We don't know if they are FBI or...
Well, we do know. We're just not telling anybody.
Okay.
And quite frankly, from a citizen's perspective, John, if that's the best that can be accomplished to define an insurgency, that is so horrible that we have to pull agents off of every other case to put them on and declare this the biggest case that we've ever undertaken in the history of the Bureau. Something's bad wrong.
Okay, and let's say that it was a true insurrection. Okay, were there firearms there? No, it was there wasn't. And then how long did this insurrection last? Oh, it lasted
a few hours.
6 hours.
Correct.
Within like 6 hours, they were back at debate. Now, they forgot the stack of boxes that had the information about how accurate those elections were that they were going to be bringing up.
You're exactly right.
That just went away. That just went away.
You know, if it was going to be an insurgency, John, why would I anticipate there may be some problems and authorize 10,000, which is without dispute now. Miley disputed it before, but he's been shot down to be the liar that he really is. We order the ability for 10,000 troops to be positioned to keep it from happening, just to be on the safe side. That's not how you win an insurgency.
And Donald Trump asked, if I remember correctly, he asked the D.C. mayor, and he said, Pelosi, hey, and I can't remember if he actually went to the Capitol Police or not, but he went to...
Well, he did via Pelosi. You remember the Capitol Police is under Pelosi.
Right.
So he went directly to the source. He asked the Speaker of the House to coordinate with the chief of the Capitol Police and to offer the assistance, and she shot it down.
And he said no, but it's really interesting how there just happened to be video crew that just happened to be there on January 6th that happened to be Pelosi's family happened to be doing some filming.
Correct.
It was their documentary. And, you know, an interesting person that was in that documentary, I believe it was her son-in-law, Pelosi's son-in-law, and her daughter. Yes, but in the same film shot, if I remember correctly, it was Nancy Pelosi's son-in-law, and if I remember correctly, who was it? The the guy that said I'm not an FBI informant, but told people to go into
Tanner.
Pardon me?
Ray Tanner.
Yes. So no, not Christopher Wray.
No, Ray Tanner. He was the one. He was the one that was the night before saying we have to go into the building, and then was never charged. Okay. Now, I say he was never charged just recently they announced 6 months ago they were going to charge him. Nobody's heard a word since then.
And it was going to be some little misdemeanor, tiny little thing. So like you
Can't
said,
even promise you whether they actually got charged or not. We don't know. I mean, I can research it, but we don't even know if he really got charged or not.
so the bottom line is, I find it very interesting in the same film shot. They're talking to one another. The son-in-law and one of the guys he was on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list for January 6th.
That's correct.
And when
He was number 16 when the list first came out, and then suddenly he was removed from the list. You didn't hear from him for about 3 or 4 years till enough congressmen started to say why, that they finally said, "Oh, I guess we're going to go ahead and charge him with," and he is somebody that we're going to investigate. But then nothing else has been said about it.
And when asked under oath, they said, "Do you know who this individual is?" They were like, "Yes, we know who he is. What information we can't talk about an ongoing investigation."
Ongoing investigation, famous line. They're so good at it.
I think I'd really like to see the Congress say when you're in I'd like to see them put together a bill that when they're in front of it and they say, "We want an answer. No, we want it now. We want it public. You will give it, or you lose your position." I mean, I to me, I see it at the same level as if they were under oath up on the stand. They need to give the information, or bottom line, everything gets thrown out.
I would agree with you, John. I think it's very simple. I think you already have the tools to do that now. Quite frankly, the House is where the budget originates. So it's very clear. I need the answer. If you can't provide the answer, we can't give you a check to pay the rent tomorrow. Very simple.
How are you going to fund your bills? Oh, too bad.
Yep. Yeah. Happy to send you your check as soon as you send me the answer.
Okay.
Nobody's backbone to do that.
So I want to say One American News is mentioning Michaelette's on their what would be the proper term? They've got a news article on Michaelette's, quoting Michaelette's, is saying that it's okay. So forgive me, I'm looking for the exact quote. Michaelette's second assassination was a failure of the Secret Service.
Correct.
Let's talk a little bit about this second attempt. Well, actually, I want to talk a little bit about the first and the second, both the first and the second attempt. So I heard in the last, I want to say it was the last month or so, that both of these individuals were in BlackRock ads. Folks, how many ads do you see for BlackRock? I see none.
I agree. You don't.
I mean, it's not like they're a big producer of commercials and sending commercials all over the place that I'm aware of. Now, I'm sure they've got some. They're a huge investment firm. They're worth like $30 trillion or something like that. Some crazy number they have in assets, supposedly, that they are over.
And where do they make all their money from, John?
What
industry produces all their cash flow? The military-industrial complex. That is, they own the military-industrial complex.
Really? Well, and then on top of that, they've gotten into housing. They, especially the bigger the company that these very large companies that produce homes, they're involved in that. I can't remember I want to say in Texas it was like 1 in 5 homes or something like that is purchased by BlackRock.
They have other divestments, but how did they get to where they're at today? It's through the military-industrial complex. That is the most lucrative business that's been on the planet of the earth for a long time.
So I find it very interesting. It'd be one thing if like they were in ads for McDonald's, or they were in ads for United Airlines or something like that produces a lot of ads and uses a lot of different people. Not when it comes to BlackRock. To me, that smells to high heaven. That's something that people need to go and focus on and go, how in the world do 2 shooters or 2 quote unquote attempted assassins be in BlackRock commercials. That
I call
has
it two patsies.
that has intelligence written all over it to me.
It does. Yeah, I think, John, you to be able to give an overview that your listeners can easily comprehend, check out for themselves. I don't encourage anybody to believe anything that anybody says until you check it out yourself. But I think you can easily check this out, verify it, and it's very easily understandable. You know, the military industrial complex, this is not during the days when the only thing we did was fight with swords. Even though the military industrial complex back then sold a bunch of swords, they made money off of it, but they didn't make trillions of dollars. Nowadays, we don't fight with swords. We fight with such advanced technology that, I mean, every second you probably spend half a million, or billion or more just in technology, tanks, laser precision bombs. We could go on and on down the list. So it is extremely lucrative. However, it's not reoccurring unless you have wars, unless you're using the stuff that you're building. So you got to keep that element in mind. Now, let's go back in history a little way. President Eisenhower was very clear that he said after World War II, he said, you need to be careful as America continues to expand and grow in the generations ahead and keep a close eye on the military industrial complex. He recognized that even in World War II, it wasn't just fighting with a bayonet or with a rifle. Tanks, bombs, the nuclear bomb, that things were moving in a fast forward manner where there was a lot of money to be made. I think he also recognized that here's what they will tell you. This is not some kind of hyperbole, is that maybe it doesn't cost that much to build an atomic bomb, but what they do is they say, well, it took billions and billions of research. Well, it may or may not have. That's subjective. So because it took so much to come up with the technology, that's why we, regardless of the cost of the bomb, now that's why we have to charge so much for everyone produced. And so they're making a huge windfall profit. But understand that to do that, they have to continue to have people use them so they can replace them. So you go from Eisenhower warning us. The next president was Kennedy. Kennedy made a statement 30 days prior to his assassination that he was beginning to discover that our government was involved in promoting wars in foreign policy, some of our foreign intelligence agencies, among other things, and that the industrial complex was being utilized to control the government through our agencies, and that he was going to expose all that because those agencies were being built in such a way that someday they could be turned against the American people.
Right.
Not at that time, but someday. Well, he ended up assassinated 30 days after that. So now move forward. And because of they want control, and I think everybody knows that that is the main thrust of especially the left, the Democratic leaning party, is they want to maintain control and power. It's hard to do that when you have people that are armed. So the only way you can destroy that is remove their arms. That's one of their tenets. The other tenet is they have to keep the money flowing. They have to keep cash moving into the industrial military complex. And how do they do that? Well, they use the money that they have to buy influence with politicians. How much money has not just the current administration, but even a lot of members in Congress? Who do you think gives the most money to reelection? Congressional members. Military industrial complex does. And so why do they need to have the Ukrainian war? Why do they need to make sure that they steal our money to help fund that? Because it continues this whole process of enriching the military industrial complex, which is ultimately controlled by some very nefarious people who control us, control our government. And so they make sure that they utilize the agencies that we have in place to be able to accomplish their end means. Now, we're going to define all that in just a second, but let's set the stage. Who is the one person who has said, you know what, as Kennedy and Eisenhower did, that said, look, if you are violating the rights of the American citizens and doing nefarious activity, unlawful activity, unconstitutional activity, when I'm in the White House, we're going to have transparency and we're going to pursue those because that's treason. And we're going to pursue those cases that expose that. And those people that have done that are going to be held accountable. We don't care whether you're a politician, judge, bureaucrat, makes no difference to me who you are. If you've been involved, you're going to be held accountable.
I know who said it. I know who said it.
Good.
Kamala Harris.
Well, no, don't think so. I think you actually were close. You're in the same fishing hole. You just got the wrong fish. There's only two fish in the hole, by the way, Harris and Trump. So that tells you what fish you should have landed.
Dang
it.
Dang it. You know, you'd think that would be what a prosecutor would say, right?
You would think. But remember that if we took your vein and if she did that as well, you wouldn't have the power issue. You wouldn't have nefarious people running the show because you wouldn't be able to break the law. And you can't do that without breaking the law. So you've got a person saying they're going to do that. So what does that cause? Well, you can't have him in office because it'll bring down the whole system. So you have to use whatever means necessary to keep that from happening, including using means that you already have in place with agencies that have all the information that they need that are helping this process be accomplished behind the scenes and covertly. Now, let's define that so your audience can understand what we're talking about. And let me ask them some questions. Now we're going to get to the assassination attempts. We'll work our way backwards. The second one at Mar-a-Lago. The person involved, Mr. Roth, has had hundreds of encounters with law enforcement. But that's not the biggest issue. The biggest issue on his resume is he is involved with foreign affairs. That's a fancy word to say that he's involved with State Department, CIA, and others, and accomplishing their end means. And what does their end means? You remember they're having to make sure we continue wars so that the cash flow comes. So he's out there helping them recruit Afghani soldiers to fight for Ukraine, to keep that battlefront going. Why is this important to bring this out? Because since he is heavily involved in this, you know he's on their radar screen. I'm talking about the governmental agencies that we just talked about. He's on their radar screen. They know when he rolls over in bed in the middle of the night, okay? They know everything about him, and they keep close track. To show you the power of that, you remember that Tulsi Gabbard,
right?
When she decided she'd had enough, and she endorsed Trump, not the Democratic nominee that they wanted her to endorse. What did they do? They put her on the TSA terrorist watch list and are making her life a living hell. She can't go anywhere without being tracked, okay, without them knowing what's going on. Yet this asset,
she's a lieutenant colonel in the National Guard.
Correct. She's a lieutenant colonel in the National Guard, served her country in Afghanistan and in Iraq. But yet you have this Mr. Roth, who's on their radar screen from Hawaii. Somehow he leaves Hawaii. He doesn't swim, by the way, from Hawaii to the mainland. He has to take a flight. So you know exactly, they know the minute that he stepped outside the door of the house to come. They know exactly where he was at. He flew all the way over here, unflagged, not raising any suspicion, any alarms. He gets to Mar-a-Lago. He now understands or has access to the calendar.
Okay, so can I dive down on that just a little bit?
Sure. Go ahead.
So I can hear the liberal friend or, hey, that's a conspiracy theory guy. How do we know that he wasn't being tracked? Is that an assumption you have, or do you have?
No. They're missing the point. I didn't say he wasn't being tracked.
Okay.
What I said is he got there without interference. So, you make your own deduction as to whether they knew he was there or not. Quite frankly, here's the issue. Not only did he get there, but he now has access to knowing a non-public, non-published document as to what the president's last-minute decision is. I think I'm going to go relax and play some golf, and this is the course I'm going to go to. Now, you tell me how he knew that. Well, let's talk about who would have known that. Well, first of all, the governmental agencies that are charged with protecting him. And you remember,
okay, I want to give you a little pushback on that. I'm going to give you a little pushback on this. Okay. So, according to mainstream media sources, he was for the last several weeks, last month, he has been going out into public information that's out there in the public in the media and and gathering information of the places that Donald Trump goes.
That
Now,
makes it even worse. So now you're telling me that he's on the radar screen, and you can't deny that statement. I've been in intelligence. There's no way that you're going to get around trying to deny that statement with me because I know how the inside works. So now you know he's flagged, and you're going to tell me that you're not monitoring, that he's researching the activities of a protectee? Now you just dug your hole even deeper. So that having been said, they don't want to go there with me, okay? They don't want to go there. So now you've got access to information. You tell me how he got it. When only the governmental agencies that are charged with designing the protectee and a few other people, the Vice President Vance knew, and maybe his family members, and that was it. Now let's go a step further. You tell me how he gets there, and that he knows he's going to that golf course, and that he knows there is what we call a high risk access point on the fifth hole that's not being covered.
okay, so for those people that are on the chattering in, trying to chatter in my ear, the leftists, the non-believers, hey John, you've been talking about conspiracy theory. It's in the public, it's in the mainstream media that at that golf course, at that spot where he was hunkered down at, in the past, they have regular patrols of the Secret Service go through, if not actually someone in that spot go and guard that spot. That is in the news, in the public domain, that information has been put out. And because his detail would happen to be reduced that day and recently, there was not someone there.
All right. I mean, would you just dug a hole deeper again, John? Because quite frankly, you remember it is the responsibility of the agency to whatever is necessary to protect the protectee. Don't get in the side rabbit trail that, oh, now that Congress just gave us more money and put him on the same level as a current president, now we can do the job. It has had nothing to do with resources. They have always had the resources that they need if they've had the will to apply them. That's the key word there. They've never had the will, the desire to protect this president, this ex-president. That's the problem. It's not a matter of a lack of resources. So now you've got, they obviously didn't do their job then, according to what you're just saying that mainstream media is talking about. They weren't protecting a high-risk area. Okay. Plus, we know for a fact now, and this is a quote-unquote lesson that they learned from Butler, the first attempt, instead of turning down a drone, they had a drone in the air. Now, remember, these are not the $5.99 drones from Walmart. These are military-grade drones with heat-seeking capability. Now we're being told, here's some discrepancies, that he was there, set up, and left. In other words, a very rapid turnaround. Or no, he was there for up to 12 hours prior. Either way, you're going to tell me that with a drone in the air, you didn't pick up on a vehicle that was in a should have been a safe area, a secure area, or that there is a person of interest in a secure area in the bushes. You're going to tell me that the drone didn't pick up on that? Impossible.
Okay. All right. So, folks, let's dive down a little bit on this. Okay. Let's just say, let's go with he's been there for 12 hours. That's a place they should have been checking. And if he's in that spot, just happens to be in the spot. So there's two narratives. One, that he was there at that spot for 12 hours. If he's at that spot for 12 hours, heat signatures would show up with him. It would be a very warm area, not just his body, but surrounding him would be pretty warm. Or the other narrative was that he just recently arrived right before he went to that spot, within 20 minutes. Well, that a car engine that just arrived with the ability with infrared, that engine and that car is going to light up with heat, and then it's going to show him walking over to that spot or over in that spot. Either way,
being stationary there to try to quote unquote. It's not like he ran over there because he couldn't get to the bathroom and was going to pee in the bushes. I
right.
mean, that didn't happen. He stayed there in that area. And you're going to tell me that wasn't picked up? You're going to tell me that routine patrols, which is what should have been happening, period, didn't you not have picked up on a vehicle, strange vehicle, an isolated vehicle, this close to a target they're supposed to be protected, and why it wasn't researched? There's no way. John, you're going to also let's throw another problem for your listeners to help you figure out here. We're bringing them into this conversation. We want them to become little mini detectives here. Now, you're going to tell me he got from Hawaii to North Carolina to West Palm Beach, and he suddenly has an AK-47 with the numbers filed off. Now, what did he do? Put it in his boot and got through TSA, got through security, and brought it over via plane? How did he get the weapon? Who delivered it to him? How did he get it? Now you say, what are you trying to say? The only way that you could get that many breaks, okay, to get this close to be able to even attempt to make a shot at the president is somebody has to be giving you information, feeding you information, assisting you in getting drop-offs, pickups, etc. Now, remember, let's go back now. He is an asset to the administration, the current administration, who are trying to keep their programs in place. What are their programs? They want to keep the military industrial complex well supplied. So they want to keep the Ukrainian war going at all costs, even if you don't, and I don't want to spend any money on it. Doesn't make any difference. They want it in full force. So because they have a patsy or an asset, whichever word you want to use, he has access, or they have access to him, and they can get whatever information. They can block whatever. If it comes up on the screen, oh, we got a red flag guy, we better get him. No, you don't. We've got it covered. Don't worry about that one. Move on. It's amazing what you can get accomplished when you have the access and when you're working within the system, John. And it's amazing what you can't get done when you don't. He's done, whether it's Crooks, which is the first one, whether it's Roth, which is the second one. There's no way anybody could have accomplished what they accomplished without having some kind of either really, really, really lucky breaks, and a lot of them all falling in place right precisely at the necessary time to do so, or they've had assistance.
So we're going to get to Crooks especially because I told K-Talk audience about a conversation that I had with a high-level officer in the former United States military officer, and I want to bring that up when we get to the first assassin. But also with this individual, okay, so a couple things that was mentioned that's out in the mainstream news. So this is being put out by the government. So how did he go about getting the firearm? Well, we know this guy got nailed for quote unquote weapons of mass destruction, meaning he had a machine gun, what was it? A unregistered, I can't remember if it was an unregistered, but he illegally was possessing a machine gun.
Attempted to convert it.
Pardon me?
A conversion.
Okay. And on top of that, so I'm talking about he was arrested for that, not necessarily the AK. Are you talking about the one that he was arrested for?
No. Yeah, I'm talking about the one that was on his record initially.
Okay.
So they haven't decided what to do with that one yet because technically it wasn't registered to him. There's no number on it. They know who it was registered to. They're still working on that case.
So the bottom line is how does he get that firearm? He didn't go to some firearm shop in Florida and purchase that, or in North Carolina or South Carolina and possibly Georgia.
Right. He could have been illegal.
He somehow he got that from a non. So could he have done it through a just Joe Schmo talk with John? Hey, I want to get rid of my SKS, which is an AK variant, and I sold it to this guy because I didn't do any background checks. That's possible. That's the only one that's even somewhat possible. But I don't think it's the case because what would happen? that dude that sold him the weapon would have called up I guarantee he's going to call someone and say, I sold him that weapon under a legal sale, because they would be crapping bricks if it gets found out otherwise.
And here's the other thing we need to add to what you just said, John. All this takes time and what we call mobilization. So he's moving around. Now, you remember, he's an asset, okay? And I know the government does not want me to use that terminology, but he's an asset within the system. So they know where he's at all points and at all times. You know how much time it must take? They have to go find the gun, purchase it, hide it somewhere to where you know you can retrieve it, go back, wait for more intel as to what is the most opportune time to come. When should we go? I mean, et cetera, et cetera. You'd have a dossier thicker than your forearm as to all the tracking that was done on him, or to line all this up, if it had been done with him and him alone.
I don't believe it was done with him and him alone.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but that's what they want you to believe. And my point is, okay, since he's in the system, since he's flagged, pull me the dossier for the last 3 years. Show me everywhere he's been. Don't tell me we don't have it. Don't insult my intelligence. Don't tell me we don't have it. Pull me the dossier. Tell me everywhere he's been. Well, you don't have that? Or you
And
don't
we've got this. And so how did we find out how long he was? Okay, in the mainstream media, the most common narrative seems to be right now that he was in that spot for 12 hours waiting for him. Well, if you were able to purchase his cell phone data that tells you where he was for that 12 hours, where else has he been? And why isn't the mainstream media mentioning where he's been?
Well, see, and it gets back to what I'm talking about. This is where you've got to make the connection. This is where I'm trying to lead the horse to water. Okay,
I'm not a good horse being led to water. I fight the bridle too much.
Well, maybe the rest of your viewers and your listeners won't. If you have been involved with assisting agencies in completing a designated mission that they want to accomplish, you remember this administration wants the war to continue in Ukraine for a lot of reasons, not just to continue to enrich the military industrial complex. There's been money laundering that's gone through Ukraine. There has been biolabs that have been discovered in Ukraine. I mean, my goodness, we could take an hour or two just talking about the Ukrainian issue, okay? So they have that is important for them to keep the Ukrainian war in progress. You've got somebody who's helping do that. He's not doing this out of the goodness of his heart, okay? He's not spending his own money. How do you think he gets to Ukraine? How do you think?
Well, we're told he only makes about $3,000 a month. How does a guy making $6,000 a month? Let's double it. How does a guy making and folks, if you've seen the pictures of his truck, it's not a brand new Ford he's driving, and it has Harris Waltz on it, by the way. It's not like he's driving a brand new truck. So let's say the guy's making $6,000 a month. That's not enough money to fly over to the mainland and do all the driving around he's done and been all over the place like he's been recently.
Well, and let me carry it a step further, John. Let's just give him $1 million a month. Do you think even with $1 million a month, you're going to be able to get into Ukraine? You're going to be able to get into all these foreign areas to help further a cause and not be flagged and tracked by the agencies? That's unrealistic. That doesn't happen. You have to be cooperating with the agencies. At least they will know. When I say cooperating, they'll know who you are. They will have paid you a visit.
And folks, he's part of the Ukrainian Foreign Legion. You're telling me that the United States government doesn't know everybody involved in the Ukrainian Foreign Legion? I guarantee you they've got all their contact information and they know who they are.
This is where the puzzle people have to listen to what we're talking about and put their own little pieces together. So if you're working within the complex, the organization, And I'm not telling you what exactly you are or not doing or what level of clearance you don't have, etc. I'm just saying if you're part of or working within that organization, they know who you are. And they have made statements. Now let's get to those statements. We missed that part of it. Then when we're talking about you, remember that people don't want a certain person to expose what the government has been doing. How do we know that? Well, let's just use one example. Andy McCabe, what did he say recently? That if a particular person gets into the White House, they're going to have to find a country that to move to that doesn't allow for extradition. Why would he make that statement? The only reason you make that statement is obviously you feel like you must have done something that is you don't want coming out. And remember,
Right.
you're a deputy director of a key agency. That's just one of many. There have been a lot there's 51 other people that have said the same thing that are on the intelligence letter that signed it for Hunter Biden. Okay, so now you understand that these people have a lot at stake. They have a lot at stake based on what they have done in the past. They're using the assets that they have used in the past, what we call patsies assets, Mr. Roth, Mr. Crux, other people, and to accomplish what's the objective? What did they say? We can't let this person get into the White House because he may follow through on what he says, and if it gets exposed, that's not a good thing.
And if you go after the CIA, it has 5 ways from Sunday to take you out. That's
That is the exact quote.
virtually an exact statement made. I want to say it was either by Chuck Schumer
It was Chuck
or
Schumer. It was Chuck Schumer.
okay. Now let's bring into this why I think he was supplied with a weapon. And somehow supplied as opposed to purchase that. Now, maybe he purchased it, but I believe why he had help. So in the mainstream news, there's the letter that's out there, and when the prosecution went to before a judge to have him be held in, so he was not allowed to be released. The judge didn't release him because he's a flight risk, and also because of the level of issues that he had, breaking firearms. They decided that he, had firearms when he wasn't supposed to. They have an unnamed source, and this is out in the news. An unnamed source was mailed a box that had ammunition and the letter. I do want to get to that letter and some of the information that contains. And on our show earlier today, you said, John, why are they talking about the contents of this letter?
That's a huge question. It's a huge red flag, John. Because let's just briefly say what's in it. You talk about, hey, obviously I failed. If you all read this letter, I failed. Anybody else want to pick up the mantle and make sure that you complete the mission? There's money in it, $150,000. So why would you want to incite others to think that, oh, the mission wasn't completed and I can get in on it and make some money and a name for myself at the same time? That's the last thing you want to do. Why would they be doing that?
Why are they putting that out in the public? You were upset that they were putting it in the public domain.
Correct. I mean, why would you do that? Why would you want to incite people to finish the mission that this guy started and take out the former president so that he can never get set footed in the White House again? Unless you're tying it back in. This is another piece of the puzzle. You're tying it back into the ultimate objective. What was their ultimate objective? You can't let him get back in the White House and expose all this. If you do, we're in trouble. The whole power system collapses. They're out of power. And the industrial military complex takes a big hit. No, it doesn't crumble. We always are going to need armaments, but not at the rate they're doing. When Trump was the president, did we have any wars, any participation or anything? They liked it to begin with because we had so drained the military complex for our soldiers that we had to restock. Okay. So they made good money to begin with. But once they got restocked, was there any need to do any more? No. And you had somebody who has a philosophy of peace through strength. And by George, he made it very clear that we had strength, did he not, when he was in president for 4 years?
Absolutely.
So peace seemed like it was going to be out there for a while. That's bad for profits. That's bad for stocks. That's bad for shareholders. So they got to get rid of that. Find somebody that's willing to keep the war machine going. They've got that now. They sure don't want to upset the apple cart and go back to the way it used to be. So they're using whatever means are necessary to keep their end objective. And here's the saddest part about it. This is what I was saying on Fox earlier. Is that, look, they're stealing you and I money. That's tax dollars. They're stealing our money from us. They're using it in part of their overall plan to make sure that they stay in power, that they keep us broke, that they keep us at war, that they keep us at risk. Because remember, part of their strategy is open borders, they've got to have that. Remember, that helps control the elections with these ballots in case we don't quite get what we want at the ballot box. So you won't get any betterment for American citizens continuing the path that you are. You're just going to continue to get pulverized, and they're going to use your own money to do so.
Let's talk a little bit about they found this guy was not like Crooks, who, I mean, he had some experience in setting up a little bit of I don't know if it was a true sniper's nest that he was in, but it was definitely it was a somewhat semi-protected area, more than just the average Joe Schmo might think of doing. He put up ceramic plates,
correct,
in the position that he was at.
Hanging them on the fence. That's correct.
So they were hung on the fence. And then, this guy had a little bit of experience, more than any shooter that I've heard about so far in the past. So we went from Crooks, now we have this guy. I'm going to guess, so I've heard the possibility of, did the Secret Service know to look at that area and to start shooting at that guy? Or was it just we got lucky that we had a good one on President Trump's detail that noticed that spot and started firing at him?
Well, I'd like to defend the agents, not the administration. And that we have good agents that are trying to do their job. Okay, let's give them credit for that. But now let's take a look at some serious questions that every American has a right to know. So first of all, you've had this person out here for roughly, supposedly 12 hours. He's in if you've ever been down there, there's bushes. It's not like it's so thick that you can't see, but there is some cover provided by the bushes. And again, the plates that were listed. Now understand, the agents weren't leaning against the fence, waiting for the detail of the president to come, okay? That fence is a good far away from where they were located. So, some people have eagle eyes. I'm not one of them. But they say some people have eagle eyes. But even with eagle eyes, you're going to see what? What is the report showing? You saw a barrel coming through the fence. At that distance, John, it could have been a kid with a stick. Okay? So you're not so sure. You can't tell me with certainty that you knew that was an AK-47 barrel. Not at that distance. So now you're telling me you have two conflicting stories. One would justify your action. Barrel pushed through, shots went off, you return fire. Okay? Obviously, shots go off, all bets are off. You better be returning fire. You eliminate the threat. But now you've changed your story on me. You're telling me no shots were fired. You fired 4 shots. Okay, so now explain to me how I'm at a distance. I understand at that distance, perfectly logical when you fire shooting a sidearm, the accuracy is compromised at that length of a distance. Okay, so I understand why you didn't hit anything. But you took 4 shots at something, are you sure was a threat? What if it would have been a child playing in the bushes? And the fact that the president we didn't have to dive on him, okay? slam him to the ground because he's in the line of sight. The president's en route from the 4th to the 5th hole. Why didn't you immediately send over a number of agents and units to investigate what was going on first? Before you took such a shot, risking the fact, now, hey, it worked out. And again, I'm very grateful.
You're asking a question that I've been wondering from almost the very beginning.
So, I'm very grateful that it turned out that way. But let's just look at what protocol is. And I'm asking you, why did you violate protocol? You took a risk because you're telling me that there were no shots fired. You think you saw a barrel sticking through, which could have been a stick. At that site, you really don't know. And at that distance, because of the fact there's also shrubbery and there's cover by the surrounding place and all, you going to have a hard time convincing me that you knew exactly what it was you were firing upon, okay? So you've got him still under protection. You could have immediately, which they did, radioed. We have a suspicion. Of course, now it's shots fired, but it's shots fired by the Secret Service agent. Dive on him, get him out of the area. So the area is clear. So why are you firing unsure of what you're firing upon? Why are you not sealing off the area and finding out? Remember, you got a drone, supposedly. Let's get back to this drone issue. Where's the drone? I remember using the old commercials back in the 80s, Wendy's commercials. Where's the beef? You remember the old ladies? Where's the beef? Yeah. Where's the drone? You're telling me there was a drone. Where was the drone? Why did it not zero in and tell me what it was exactly I'm looking at and what we need to do to apprehend it?
Okay. Is there a possibility that they did zero in and they let the Secret Service guy, but that hasn't been put out in public information. So I'm guessing the answer to that is no.
That's critical. And then you change your story. Gilman, let's go to the next part of the story. Okay, now you're telling me that there is a female driving in the vicinity who saw a guy running towards his car, thought it was odd that you were running. So she pulls up behind him, stops while he's trying to get the car going, takes a couple cell phone photos, and then transmits them to the police. They transmit them into the AP system and APB system, all points below the system. And then we pick him up roughly 10 miles down the road on I-95. Okay, here's a couple questions for you then.
Also, another thing about this guy that tells me he has had training is they said he was not speeding. He was driving along under, at the speed limit.
Correct.
That is training, folks. I guarantee you hear about every gangbanger, everybody that's ever shot at someone. What do? They run into the car and they hit the gas and they speed.
So now you got the question, John. So, okay, let's just take it at face value. Odd that the woman were going to pull up behind you. You remember women are a little bit skittish about being, safety to begin with. But I'm going to pull up behind you. Okay, I'll grant you that could have happened. I'm going to take pictures of the tag. So how do you know where you're going to send it, John? How do you know? And in the time it took, I'm not saying you can't figure out where to send it, but are you not going to call first and say, hey, look, I just had to be driving. There's this weird guy that just running from the golf course. Oh, we just had an incident with the president. This may be your guy. Where do you want me to send you these pictures? That takes time. Have you ever tried to call a big agency like West Palm Beach?
Here's another thing that just kind of pinged me as being weird, like bing, a little radar thing right out there at the very edge, just a little ping. They flew this person to go and they flew him to take him to say, is this the person you saw? Speaking of Ryan Routh.
Correct.
I don't ever remember hearing in any news story that they flew someone out. I'm assuming when they say they flew him, to go, what was
by
it?
Helicopter.
I'm assuming it was by helicopter. I mean, I never remember hearing in a news story that somebody that saw someone, they flew him there in a helicopter.
The difficulty with that, John, is if we're following protocol now. We're trying to give the benefit of the doubt and trying to follow protocol. So if somebody called in a tag and the tag was accurate to the description of the vehicle, because you would have given the description of the vehicle, um, and the person's acting suspicious, I would have just taken you in. Okay, we'll sort through later about getting the person maybe to come down to the station that afternoon or the next day or whatever to identify, is this the person that you saw, etc. I wouldn't be taking the time in the personnel to fly you to the scene of where he's been apprehended to make sure we have the right person. I've got all the probable cause of the evidence I need by the fact that you dialed in and gave me the license tag number and the description of the vehicle to make an arrest. Okay. So is it so important now to use uh, personnel, etc., to bring you out to make sure I've identified the right person? Quite frankly, when a person is running, I the most you're going to be able to do is say, yeah, John was wearing a blue shirt. He had, a go. I can't give you solid, accurate information because that's just not the way human beings work, unless I'm taking a picture of you. And then if I was going to do that, why did I just transfer the picture?
Right.
So if you remember, it initially came out that the drone had picked up the car, gotten a picture of the tag, and put it on the APB system.
Right.
Then they changed. So the same thing you're seeing occurring in Butler is we had information, and then we've been changing the narrative. Oftentimes, unfortunately, what we're finding, the same thing happened in Butler. You thought you were changing the narrative to make it sound better to what you were trying to accomplish, and you actually ended up digging your hole deeper and making matters worse. Just like initially it was reported that he had just got there, parked, went in, set up for the shot, and then it went south. Now, if you're telling me he was there for 12 hours, that just makes it worse. Why didn't you do patrols? Why didn't you pick him up on the drone, etc.? You tell me now that you saw him when he put his gun barrel through the fence. I would have a very obvious question to somebody that has any experience. Why would I give up my vantage point without having the shot? And if I had the shot, in other words, if I'm putting my barrel through the fence because the shot is within sight, I just try to refocus it. I probably have more than enough time to get off a few shots before you're going to be, quote unquote, noticing the barrel in the fence and returning fire. So those all beg questions as to how this whole thing put together. What doesn't beg a question is the fact that you're using a narrative that, it wasn't all fault. We didn't have enough money for enough personnel. When you've known for months and months that his detail has repeatedly asked for additional personnel. You denied it 3 times. You weren't successful in protecting him in Butler. You did nothing other than the fact that supposedly, I'm beginning to question now, was there even a drone there? I'd like to see the records. Supposedly you used a drone, but obviously, if you did, I don't know who was running it or who was using it, but it sure didn't work.
Well, I'll tell you this: those drones move pretty fast.
They do.
So my son's high school football team runs a drone to film um, the football field, and it'll zip from way beyond, probably 20 yards beyond the back of the end zone to the others. So what it does is, what they have them do is, they can't have it go right over the field. They actually have to take it off to the side of the field and then to go around. So it'll go from being 20 yards back on one side of the field, then zip it around, not going over the field, but going around the field. It'll change the side in 15, 20 seconds.
Easy.
Way outpaces anybody that can run, unless you're like Usain Bolt.
So what you're seeing, John, is people are beginning to say, And let me deal with the question you raised. I'm glad you brought it up. Oh, this is a conspiracy theorist. No, a conspiracy theory is telling you, John, this is what happened, and here's the people responsible. I'm not telling you this is what happened and this is what the people are responsible. I'm telling you these are the questions that the Americans deserve answer to. I'm telling you that there is an extremely low probability that Butler or Mar-a-Lago could have had the events transpire in the methodology that they did and gotten that many breaks to be able to get that close in either situation to being able to assassinate the president. I'm telling you that when you look at the overall facts of what players have said, Andy McCabe and others, that it causes probable cause and suspicion as to whether nefarious issues have occurred in our government. And I think, quite frankly, most of your listeners right now are probably laughing at me saying that because they probably figured, yeah, I think there's a lot our government's been doing that they probably don't want anybody to know about. And you've got a person that's saying, I'm going to make sure we drain the swamp. I tried 4 years ago, but to my credit, I thought I was going in there with everybody behind me with the same objective. And come to find out, you find out quickly that a lot of people say, John, I'm your best friend, except for don't mess with the stuff that I've been doing. I'm going to protect my covering up my stuff. And that's what happened the first 4 years. It was very difficult to find people he could trust. So I think they now know that he knows how the game works. He knows who you do and don't need on the team, how to get it accomplished. So he's a real threat now to them. And it should be no surprise to anyone that they are willing to use whatever resources they have at their hand. But bear in mind, they are at the controls at the moment, okay? They control the appointments to who heads these agencies. They control the dollars that are given to these agencies. And so it should come as no surprise that they're using all their leverage for their end means, and that is to stay in power, stay in control, so they can keep this activity going for a long time to come and screw what's left of the American people.
Let's touch a little bit on Butler, Pennsylvania. So, folks, I've heard this from many sources, that people who were not just Michael, who's been involved in protection, but I've heard either secondhand or yes, hearing through someone else telling me, someone that we both know, that's involved in protection, does professional protection, is like the screw ups that happened in Butler. There's no way that it could be possible. Well, last week I spoke with someone that has firsthand experience from an officer level in the military. In fact, he actual general within the United States military who has been involved in protection and protection details. And he's like, John, bottom line is there is no way. He goes, the only way that I can say that it was a failure by the Secret Service is if it was an intentional, things were intentionally done to cause a systemic failure. That's the only way that it possibly could have happened. There's no way that that was an accident. He goes, first of all, the fact that they had women that were that short, he goes, the president's 6'3". You're not going to put women on that. So unfortunately, I didn't have a lot of time with this former general who's literally been over details and VIP details. My understanding is around the world.
Well, let me defend the
So,
general real quick.
so
In the military, we call it force protection. So that your listeners wonder, what does the military have anything to do with this? We have to have force protection everywhere we're at. Germany, wherever. You have to make sure you're protecting the soldiers, not just during a combat situation,
well,
but while they're there.
he wasn't only not doing. He didn't talk. He said VIP, meaning actual other nations'
Correct.
leadership.
Mm-hmm.
That he was involved in protecting. And he's like, John, it was just, he goes, absolute catastrophe. So I would be curious. So one thing that you've mentioned this before, And he mentioned this, and I haven't had the chance to chase it down the rabbit hole with him. Hopefully, I get the opportunity to, and hopefully, I get to actually divulge I get permission to use his name. But even if I don't, it probably wouldn't be too hard to figure out how Talk with John knows this guy. But what percentage? So I Googled while we were in this conversation. What percentage of the U.S. population is 6'3" or taller? Anybody have an idea?
I wouldn't have the slightest.
So only 14.5% of U.S. men are 6 feet or taller.
Wow.
6'3", according to Google, when I put that in, what percentage? Only 4% of men are 6'3" or taller. So I would be curious. It would be curious to know how much. We better not get a president that's 6'5", because that gets really difficult. I mean, so I happen to know some people that have been in Secret Service, literally been served in the Secret Service, and I think one of the people that comes right to the top of my mind, he's like 6'1", 6'2". So I'm going to assume that there's not a lot of people within the Secret Service because, yeah, they can get the best of the best, but still 3% is still 3% to draw from. But there's no way you put a woman that's somewhere in the neighborhood of 5'5" on that detail. And he goes, that is the number one. He goes, when I saw that, it was the most obvious glaring thing. He goes, that was either strategic DEI to allow that scenario to happen, or it's even more nefarious. It was set up and someone there was people in on it. And he goes, I have no problem with getting to the point where it was an actual people were involved, setting the stage, making sure that happened. That guy got there. So,
and kind of follow what you're saying, John. From what I have been saying tonight, we're not saying that it was a particular agency or government that tried to pull the trigger or had the smoking gun. Is what we're saying is there are so many questions. You had to have people on the inside, on the know, who either looked the other way or provided intel that was necessary to be able to line this up to allow it to happen.
And I'm going to come and folks. Michael, John, come on, you're way out of it. You're going too far because that is conspiracy. I'm going to go back to this. I'm going to hammer it home. They both were in BlackRock ads within the last 2 to 3 years. I'm sorry, the statistics on those three things being those two individuals being in BlackRock ads and being shooters, the statistics on that, I'd love to see a statistician because I guarantee you it's got to be somewhere in the neighborhood of multiple million of people. Sure. Got to be multiple million, one in multiple million.
Well, one of the biggest things, John, you talk about from a crime standpoint now, is as you begin to look at suspects, you first of all have to determine a motive. There's got to be motive for you to build the case on. I think we've clearly established there's plenty of motive here. Then you go from motive to how it would possibly move forward and how you could lay it out and make it happen. And that's what's frustrating and sad. I remind our audience, those who hate Trump that are listening to you right now, those who love Trump, I'm talking to everyone. Isn't it interesting that 20 years ago, it didn't make any difference what party you were at, they all loved Trump. They thought he walked on water. It was only when he decided to run, and then it was only when he decided to run on a particular platform, and his key point in that platform was we're going to drain the swamp, we're going to expose what's been happening in government for all these years, the abuse, and we're going to fix it and make sure it doesn't occur anymore, that suddenly he became a devil. Isn't that amazing?
Well, I don't know if there's anything else that you want to mention from assassination attempt number 2 or assassination attempt number 1. I don't know if there's anything else you want to hit on those, but I want to get to bunkers on the border and I want to get to Chicago and Venezuelan gangs. We may be looking out there.
Well, I think we'll conclude with the assassination things by saying this: they perfected the art of cover-up. With investigations underway, we're not going to comment until we get to that point, and there's no timeline as to how long it's going to take to get to that point. So, unless we get a change of administration, we're never going to know.
And that might point to a little bit of a conclusion in itself.
Exactly.
I'm trying to remember what was in the news cycle. So, like
you're
a couple
smarter
days,
than you let on to, John.
there was. I'm trying to remember what was in the news cycle right before, and it had to do with Ukraine. I'm trying to remember what was in the news cycle within, like, I want to say it was 3 or 4 days before the second assassination attempt happened, but something was going on with Ukraine and Trump was talking about, and the thought went through my mind.
What you're referring to was the fact that now people are beginning to say, we're hearing from within the system that all the armaments, all the support we're providing, never get to the battlefield. Where's all the money going? And what is being sent instead of cash as armaments, where are they going? Because the field commanders in Ukraine are not reporting that any of the information, any of the armaments, I shouldn't say any, very small percentage of the armaments being told that are on the way ever arrive on the front lines. And we were just beginning to discuss what's going on, and boom, we never got to the next phase because it became back burner news after that.
Oh, and also it was 2 data points. Now that I remember, it was that, and then the high long distance missiles that they were talking about.
Correct.
Those were the 2 things that came out. Huh?
That is still in play.
Well, yes, they're still in play, absolutely. But we're talking, folks. I bottom line is yes, Donald Trump has got to get into office.
And then, of course, that leads to the next point you were raising. People need to understand it's not just for them keeping Donald out. It's also positioning themselves to maintain control.
Power and control.
And the way they do that is they are allowing insurgents, terrorists, mercenaries, I could use all the words interchangeable, to come into this country, to position themselves in key locations, what I call infrastructure locations, to do a tremendous amount of damage if we start asking too many questions. Because you remember, the cat's kind of out of the bag. A lot of people are now questioning what's going on. So you either better get yourself back in the bag, or if you start asking too many questions, we're going to unleash holy hell on the American people by the people we're setting up. And you won't be worried about it then. You'll be trying to figure out how you're going to live from one day to the next.
Well, something that's in the news cycle right now is that supposedly we are looking at the possibility of a cyber attack on U.S. infrastructure and in the United States by both China and Russia in October, right before the elections.
And I would say this: they want you to think by China and Russia, but I wouldn't put as much credence into those as being the major players that they have put out there for you to hate, as much as it is the players that we know are actively doing this on a day-to-day basis. Maybe they're using some of the technology and support from some of these major governments, but the actual field soldiers are not the Russians, and really, for that matter, not even the Chinese. And quite frankly, they want you to believe that so that you miss looking in the right directions where it's really coming from.
Well, I want to come back to the Chinese because we have Special Forces Chinese here in the United States. But that plays into the bunkers on the border, and also something that was in the news just over the last 48 hours. We have people in Chicago and gang members saying, actually not gang members, but Chicago um, elect, I believe elected officials coming out and saying, "Hey, we got to get these Venezuelans taken care of, or else the Chicago gangs are going to be protecting their territory, and then we've got a match that's going to get lit on basically a stick of dynamite that we can't control."
They're limiting it to Chicago now, but that's not accurate. It's happening all across the country. It's happening in New York, Detroit. It's happening on the West Coast. And you remember, here's how you give a quick overview. We're going to tie in the tunnels because you remember if you're going to maintain control, you have to have an army to do so. You thought you would just get the American people to be gullible and vulnerable. That seems to be falling apart. And they're beginning to question now and beginning to reject what is occurring. So you want to put together an army then that can help you create havoc and help keep these unruly people in place. So you open the borders. Of course, that benefits you also in a number of different ways. It benefits you from being able to fulfill fraudulent election ballots, helps keep you in power that way. It opens up markets that you can then enter into for drug participation, drug sales. And don't think for a minute that the government is not benefiting off the fentanyl that's coming across in leaps and
Oh,
bounds.
I'm going to guarantee you there are many elected officials that are getting a lot of money into their campaigns right now from
And
cartel and so forth.
right, and don't think you can have 380 something thousand children disappear and not benefit by that in human sex trafficking. So, they set up to be able to get their infrastructure in place. They create bunkers. I told you, and actually that was reported on Fox News, and then it was taken down within 15 minutes after it was posted.
Okay, so let's talk about those bunkers. Now, folks, okay, so Michael, whose bunkers are? I'm assuming the United States has lots of bunkers on the border, right?
Uh, well, I wish I could say yes. You would think we should, but actually we don't. And quite frankly, the bunkers originate on the other side of the border. That's where they start, and then they tunnel underneath. And they tunnel underneath if there are walls. They tunnel underneath that so that they have multiple connections to the other side. What is the purpose of a bunker? You say if it was just, I don't need a bunker if I'm just transporting personnel. Okay, I have to have a bunker to be able to store and be able to have strategic uh, supply lines for armaments. I can't put them on a fence next to the border and throw a blanket over it and say, hey, look, we're going to come back and pick up all these munitions later. So you build bunkers, you stock them, which is what we have discovered. The bunkers that we're talking about do have munitions in them. They are being stocked. And then once your supply lines are secure, then you're ready to proceed with the next phase of the operation. What's the next phase of the operation? You have your personnel already here, whether they're Chinese militants, whether they're gangs, whether they are cartels, whether they're terrorists, whether they are drug traffickers, human sex traffickers, or whether they're criminals. And you remember our dollars help move them all around the country, strategically locating. Then you begin to let them secure and establish what we call FBOs or forward operating bases. And you want to set those operating bases to begin with in what deems to be the most friendliest territory. So where are you going to put them at? Democratic controlled areas. Why? Because they are sanctuary cities. It's much more difficult to go after them and get them removed because you can't cooperate with the feds. So once they've got them established there, plus, by the way, you remember I told you on your show a while back, first time in history, gangs are now cooperating among each other. I'm not talking about local American gangs, which is what you're referring to in Chicago. We're talking about MS-13. We're talking about Terra de Agua, others, foreign gangs that are now, instead of coming in, killing each other off for territory in America, they figured out we were better off if we become a mafia and we kind of work together on this because we're going to have to take on some established U.S. gangs. So that's what they're doing now. Now they're going to the next phase. We need to eliminate our competition secure our forward operating bases. Once we have that, then we are in position to do whatever the people paying the bill are wanting us to do. And who's paying the bill? We know that a lot of these funding for these groups are coming from Iran, from terrorist-based countries. You think they have the best interests of America at heart? I don't think so. So what do they want to do? They want to position, and we know that a lot of them have already been positioned in areas where there are key infrastructure locations, water plants, electrical grids, things along those lines. So remember,
we also know that they're following around special forces.
Correct. And we know this. We know that, quite frankly, in the old days in World War II, we stormed the beaches, remember? And we worked our way in to gaining territory. Now we figured out that why sacrifice all those soldiers, talking about the invading soldiers, just knock out the infrastructure, especially if we become so dependent on it. You know what would happen to this country if suddenly they don't have any more power? If we don't have any more water, power, food.
We become a fourth world country, not a third world country. We become a I'm going to say we're going to have a new term, fourth world country. And the reason is why? Why do I say, John, you're stupid making up some stupid term? You'd be better to be in a third world country.
You would be, because they understand, they know how to deal with this. They've dealt with it for years. It's something that we're totally inexperienced with. We have no idea. I'm amazed when you talk to people. Oh, the power goes out, I'll just listen on my phone, and I'll just drive to McDonald's for lunch, and I'll be inconvenienced till the power goes on in the afternoon. No, you won't, because there's no more gas, so you're not driving anywhere, because there's no pump, no electricity to use the pumps. There's no more power to power your cell phone. It just went dead. There's no water to power. You can't power the pumps to push the water around. You have no idea how bad it will be when you shut down the infrastructure, even for 24 hours. Now knock it out for 3 months, 6 months, a year, and see how bad it gets. And here's why I'll leave you with this conclusion, John. When people panic because they don't know if they're going to survive, you really have chaos then. When it's kind of like, I've got to do anything I need to be able to survive, kill whatever, do whatever to be able to survive for myself, that's when you have chaos.
I want to say it was Syria. There was a book. I can't even remember the name of the book, but it was someone wrote a book over in Syria. He said one of the most women were selling their own bodies, for a lighter.
Yes, you haven't seen
a little cigarette lighter.
Yep.
Women would sell their bodies for that.
Like I said, we have no idea. We've never been there. I've lived in foreign countries. I know what it's like, but even then, not to that degree. And that's where we're headed as a country. Here's what I want to leave your listeners with. We're not there yet.
Before you leave us, I do have a question on the bunkers.
Sure.
Who do you think those bunkers were made by? Are they concrete reinforced? I'm assuming
concrete reinforced. They're professional design. They were made by the cartels, who are the ones that actually put them together. Do I think they designed them at all? No, I think there was government assistance in doing that. Why are they needed? Well, let me give you another little tidbit, folks. And you got to take all this information and put it on a puzzle map and put all the pieces together. But as you recall, one of the pieces of the puzzle that's out there is we've got $87 billion of military hardware that we left behind in Afghanistan. Who got it? The Taliban. Do they want it? Yeah, they don't have any need for it. So what are they doing with it? They're bartering it, giving it to Iran, giving it to other terrorist organizations. So what do they do when they send it over here? Well, probably doesn't look good to have that kind of armaments sitting in your driveway in America. So we've got to store them in bunkers. They've got ordinances have to be kept there so that when the time moves, that the signal is given, that it's time to go to the next phase, you're ready to move.
And we just happen to give them phones as soon as they come into the United States by the Democrats.
Correct.
Okay, so leave us with.
Let me throw this little thing out there real quick to all everybody that's listening. Since we gave them the phones, We have that could be easily put together as a control list. I think we talked earlier about what happened when you could be on a control list. So yeah, take a phone by all means. Take two.
Leave us with your last departing thoughts. I interrupted your thoughts with the bunker, so you said I want to leave your audience with this.
Because of the fact that we are waking up as a nation and people, because of your show, John, you're part of this, because people are asking questions, demanding answers, not to be brushed off. There is always hope. You can't fix a problem until you recognize you have one. And I believe America is realizing that this direction is not where we want to go. They're rejecting it. They want to know what we can do. We're going to provide them with those answers. But the key here is we have to be united. Let's not do what happened in Nazi Germany, where, well, you fix it, John, and once it's done, then I'll step up and help you. No, it doesn't work that way. Either we all stand united and we all navigate and come to a better tomorrow and a better country for our children and our grandchildren, or we will all perish one by one. So let's stand together. Our differences are not what we make them out to be. Most Americans love this country. They love their freedoms. They love their children. They love their families. We're going to grab on to what unites us, and we're going to tell this evil axis that has decided it's going to control us and destroy us, that we're going to send them back to where they belong, to the pits of hell. And I'll help lead the charge to make sure we get there.
Amen, brother. Well, God bless you. God bless the work you do in Invest USA. And I want to say thank you so much for being here tonight on Talk with John.
Thank you for what you're doing to get the truth out. You keep doing that because we're going to win. I no question in my mind, we will be victorious and we'll be celebrating shortly. But hold on together. United we stand, divided we fall. Keep that in mind.
All right. Well, folks, this has been Main Street Media Utah. You can view this on, and as you probably are or have, and as many of you are, you can do it on X, on our channels on X, Rumble, and YouTube. So thank you so much. Appreciate a number of you watching, and for those of you that will be watching,